The Marshal thought this barrier not so well fortified as the others, and determined to break through it. He dismounted 20 men to make a breach in the barricade, whilst he and others, remaining on their horses, were to protect the assailants. The 20 men marched straight toward the barrier, but from behind the beams, from among the wagon wheels, and from the heights of the rocks, a terrible fusillade burst forth, and at the same time Planchet's halberdiers appeared at the corner of the Cemetery of the Innocents, and Lauviers's bourgeois at the corner of the Rue de l'Aumône. The Marshal de la Meilleraie was caught between two fires, but he was brave and made up his mind to die where he was. He returned blow for blow, and cries of pain began to be heard in the crowd. The guards, more skilful, did greater execution, but the bourgeois, more numerous, overwhelmed them with a veritable hurricane of iron. Men fell around him as they had fallen at Rocroi or at Lerida. Fontrailles, his aide-de-camp, had an arm broken, his horse had received a bullet in his neck, and he had difficulty in controlling him, maddened by pain. In short, he had reached that supreme moment when the bravest feel a shudder in their veins, when suddenly, in the direction of the Rue du Zerber Sec, the crowd opened, crying "Long live the co-tutor," and Gondy, in surplice and cloak, appeared, moving tranquilly in the midst of the fusillade, and bestowing his benedictions to the right and left, as undisturbed as if he were leading a procession of the Fête Dieu. All fell to their knees. The Marshal recognized him and hastened to meet him. "Get me out of this, in Heaven's name," he said, "or I shall leave my carcass here and those of all my men." A great tumult arose, in the midst of which even the noise of thunder could not have been heard. Gondy raised his hand and demanded silence. All were still. "My children," he said, "this is the Marshal de la Meilleraie, as to whose intentions you have been deceived, and who pledges himself, on returning to the Louvre, to demand of the Queen, in your name, our Broussels' release. You pledge yourself to that, Marshal," added Gondy, turning to La Meilleraie. "Morbleu," cried the latter, "I should say that I do pledge myself to it. I had no hope of getting off so easily." "He gives you his word of honour," said Gondy. The Marshal raised his hand in token of assent. "Long live the co-tutor," cried the crowd. Some voices even added, "Long live the Marshal," but all took up the cry in chorus, "Down with Mazarin." The crowd gave place, the barricade was opened, and the Marshal, with the remnant of his company, retreated, preceded by Friquet and his bandits, some of them making a presence of beating drums, and others imitating the sound of the trumpet. It was almost a triumphal procession only. Behind the guards the barricades were closed again. The Marshal bit his fingers. In the meantime, as we have said, Mazarin was in his closet, putting his affairs in order. He called for D'Artagnan, but in the midst of such tumult he little expected to see him, D'Artagnan not being on service. In about 10 minutes D'Artagnan appeared at the door, followed by the inseparable Porthos. "Ah, come in, Monsieur d'Artagnan," cried the cardinal, "and welcome your friend too. But what is going on in this accursed Paris?" "What is going on, my lord? Nothing good," replied D'Artagnan, shaking his head. "The town is in open revolt, and just now, as I was crossing the Rue Montorgueil with Monsieur du Vallon, who is here, and is your humble servant, they wanted, in spite of my uniform, or perhaps because of my uniform, to make us cry 'Long live Broussel,' and must I tell you, my lord, what they wished us to cry as well?" "Speak, speak, down with Mazarin." "I'faith, the treasonable word is out." Mazarin smiled, but became very pale. "And you did cry?" he asked. "I'faith, no," said D'Artagnan, "I was not in voice. Monsieur du Vallon has a cold, and did not cry either." "Then, my lord, "Then what?" asked Mazarin. "Look at my hat and cloak." And D'Artagnan displayed 4 gunshot holes in his cloak and 2 in his beaver. As for Porthos's coat, a blow from a halberd had cut it open on the flank, and a pistol shot had cut his feather in 2. "Ivolo," said the cardinal, pensively gazing at the 2 friends with lively admiration, "I should have cried. I should—" At this moment the tumult was heard nearer. Mazarin wiped his forehead and looked around him. He had a great desire to go to the window, but he dared not. "See what is going on, Monsieur d'Artagnan," said he. D'Artagnan went to the window with his habitual composure. "Oh, oh," said he, "what is this?" Marshal de la Meilleraie returning without a hat, Fontrailles with his arm in a sling, wounded guards' horses bleeding, and then, "What are the sentinels about? They are aiming, they are going to fire. They have received orders to fire on the people if the people approach the Palais Royal," exclaimed Mazarin. "But if they fire, all is lost," cried D'Artagnan. "We have the gates. The gates to hold for 5 minutes, the gates. They will be torn down, twisted into iron wire, ground to powder. God's death! Don't fire!" screamed D'Artagnan, throwing open the window. In spite of this recommendation, which, owing to the noise, could scarcely have been heard, 2 or 3 musket shots resounded, succeeded by a terrible discharge. The balls might be heard peppering the façade of the Palais Royal, and one of them, passing under D'Artagnan's arm, entered and broke a mirror in which Porthos was complacently admiring himself. "Alack, alack!" cried the cardinal, "a Venetian glass!" "Oh, my lord," said D'Artagnan, quietly shutting the window, "it is not worth while weeping yet, for probably an hour hence there will not be one of your mirrors remaining in the Palais Royal, whether they be Venetian or Parisian. But what do you advise, then?" asked Mazarin, trembling. "And, egad, to give up Broussel, as they demand, what the devil do you want with a member of the Parliament? He is of no earthly use to anybody.